The story you're about to enjoy is a factual tale, read to you from a fictional location. We believe.
Oh, Mr. Darling, could you please unlock the human leather-bound book about human leather-bound books? Our Miss Tess seems to have an allergy to the cologne of the fellow its binding is made from.
Certainly, madam. What a fine and fascinating read he is. I mean, it is. Even I am almost compelled toward empathy, once you hold the warm, fleshy volume in your hands. The chapter about his will commanding the book to be made from his skin is most humane.
It is quite a sensual experience. The very definition of a story told from the first-person perspective. I guess we could say he truly is an open book.
Do you know, the maids have been heard giggling whilst they dust the ticklish tome.
Well, I don't want to spoil their fun, but perhaps it is time for his shave. Try not to nick the nipple this time, perhaps.
Oh, assuredly, madam. I'll take the precaution of using a modern blade instead of a straight razor.
Very thoughtful. Welcome everyone to the Midnight Library. Please do come in and find a cozy spot and warm yourselves by our glowing fireplaces. Careful, not too close now. No, I mean not too close to me. Step away, dear. I'm your helpful host in the flesh, Miranda Merrick. We are more than just a little pleased to have you in for our final reading of the season. And we are quite fond of you, no matter what you may have heard in the village. Let us begin tonight's reading on a perilously personal but also pleasing level. Let's visit the skin you're in. The flesh is a marvelous material, isn't it? It's likely larger than you imagine, being on average 22 square feet in size, give or take. It's your first line of defense against injury and illness, and recognized as the largest vital organ of the human body. You cannot live without it, but we at the Midnight Library would be happy to help if you wanted to try. Beautiful to behold and titillating to touch, your carnal canvas graciously drapes itself over all those pointy-pokey bones with the meaty bits tacked to them, and kindly holds in the roughly 25 feet of the slippery ropes of your pink intestines. Your skin is tough. It takes a licking and... anyway... Since time immemorial, humans have been using the flesh or hides of other animals to protect and preserve their own covering of skin. We've only to look at ancient cave paintings and burials to verify this fact. Or even better, feast your eyes on our dapper Mr. Darling in his dashing sheepskin coat. So, what could be better for your own skin but to add more skin on top of it? My apologies. I'm not intending for this to sound salacious, because tonight we're here to talk to you seriously about skin books. Wait, books covered in skin. Human skin transformed into leather. The official nominative nomenclature, which I love, and I believe you will love, is anthropodermic bibliopagy, or human leather-bound books. Oh, they exist all right. Of course, we don't have any here. Again, no matter what you may have heard in the village. Mr. Darling, would you kindly return this secret volume of the Witch's Handbook of Dream Control to its locked spot on the top shelf? I don't want it lying around for our guests to see.
Certainly, madam. Isn't it wonderful how all of your best-beloved books are safe from the prying eyes of the public? It's a shame we cannot say the same for our guests who frequent the internet. Their privacy is routinely monitored by their own internet providers, as well as government agencies and the entertainment industry.
Well then, you and I should do a good deed and inform them about ExpressVPN. We in the Midnight Library value our privacy above all else, my dear guests. Let us tell you how you can easily protect your privacy too.
'Tis true. With ExpressVPN, your private information, what sites you visit, and who you choose to interact with are all kept protected from those who make knowing your business their business. But ExpressVPN isn't just marvelous at protecting your privacy, it's also excellent at giving one access to the most delightful media entertainments available in the world. Because you can also use ExpressVPN to unlock movies and shows that are only available in other countries. And you may not know this about me, but I'm a monster fan of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So all I do is simply fire up the ExpressVPN app, change my location to Australia, refresh Netflix, and voila! I can binge on young Master Will's witty rejoinders as much as I please.
Oh, you mean our beloved Prince Rakosi has started a new life down under at his manor in Adelaide? Do you know he hasn't aged a day since the 1740s?
No, madam, that's not... never mind. The point is, ExpressVPN hides your IP address and lets you control where you want sites to think you're located. You can choose from almost 100 different countries. There are hundreds of VPNs available, but we use ExpressVPN to watch shows because it's blazing fast. There's never any buffering or lag, and you can stream in HD no problem.
I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about, but I do appreciate you keeping our interests hidden. And, Mr. Darling, how about we add several more comfy chairs to the reading room for our lovely guests?
Madam, that's uncanny. Do you know, I had a vivid dream of the reading room filled with velvet chairs with mesmerized, happy guests all around.
You don't say.
Aha! Well, this is no dream, because if you visit our special link right now at expressvpn.com/midnight, you can get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Support the Midnight Library, watch what you want, and protect yourself with ExpressVPN at expressvpn.com/midnight.
They do exist and aren't typically locked away in some secret, horrific cabinet of curiosities like you might imagine. Well, not all of them anyway. Many are to be found on some of the most respected shelves of higher learning in world-class establishments such as Brown University, Harvard University, and the College of Physicians of Philadelphia. The practice of binding books by gathering the pages together without a hard cover can be traced back to roughly the 2nd century, with the paper or vellum pages being run through with strips of cloth or twine to secure them. These are referred to as limp books. By about the 8th century, in order to protect the pages, thin veneers of wood and rough thick paper or animal hides were added, bound as a case surrounding the delicate pages. Later, bookbinding itself became elevated to a kind of art form, and the treated skins of sheep, goats, cattle, and pigs transformed into leather are known to be most durable, as the passage of time has proven. The organic material is and was abundant, inexpensive, and long-lasting. It also lends itself to a high level of artistic flair, as the prepared surface can be fashioned into an almost endless list of beautiful and practical items. People who work with leather are called tanners or cordwains. It seems only natural, in my estimation anyway, that at some point it was bound to occur to someone that human skin could possibly be utilized in a similar fashion. The idea seems only human. So when did the repurposing the peelings of people begin? Who had a hand in the matter? As with any darkly intriguing subject, the answer depends on how specific you intend to get. If we're talking about books alone, we know that some books that have been covered in human skin date back to the 1600s. But if we are speaking in generalities about the reuse of human skin, the practice likely goes back thousands of years to a time when indigenous native peoples were known to cover objects such as drums in a deceased person's skin, as well as the practice of, believe it or not, Native American grandmothers to cut patches out of their living flesh, set them out to dry in the sun, and then sealed the dried pieces of skin inside small gourds to give to their newborn grandchildren as rattles to play with. Ah, maternal love, where would we all be without it? Well, back to the books. As I mentioned, some of the first known human book covers date from the 1600s, and those of you who may know something about this time period know that it was still an active time of the study of anatomy, the covert study of anatomy. Since no one from this time period would have conceived of or dreamt of leaving their body to science, anatomists, those who wished to gain the specialized knowledge of the human body, were sadly in dire straits when it came to procuring a fresh corpse to dissect. They often stooped below their station in life and rubbed shoulders with underhanded undertakers, gruesome gravediggers, and greedy-hearted grave robbers. Whilst studying the human body, anatomists also became proficient at preserving it, an absolute necessity given how fast the human mortal coil sloughs off into a festering pile of goo. These anatomists would sometimes preserve the skin of the person whom they'd learned so much from, and use that skin to cover the forthcoming anatomy books. For many years, the custom of doing this was a way of honoring the donor. In this now seemingly harsh imagining, the person's flesh served as a protector of knowledge displayed in the book they had personally made a contribution to. We can all see the poetic license in the practice explained in this manner, yes? Well, perhaps only me then. Oh, never fear, dear patrons. Some of you are looking a little pale. It may cheer you up to learn that not only were the books covered in human skin as a kind of homage, but also as a form of punishment. In a very dark turn of events in the early 1800s, two helpful gentlemen, grave robbers were exceptionally talented at procuring the freshest corpses around. Burke and Hare were secretly known by local anatomists to be counted upon for the delivery of the freshest flesh. And how do you think they were able to do this? Burke and Hare had the amazing good fortune to be there, right when the people had died, because Burke and Hare had killed them. It turns out the two gentlemen were only posing as grave robbers. In actuality, they were pitiless killers who murdered 17 people and sold their fresh-as-a-daisy dead bodies to the studious dissectionists. Very helpful and industrious. It will probably surprise no one here that upon being found out, Hare ratted out his partner by turning King's evidence against him to literally save his own skin, while Burke was convicted and then publicly dissected and then his flesh was used to cover the Burke pocket book, which now resides in the Surgeons' Hall in Edinburgh, Scotland. It's emblazoned with gold leaf lettering that reads, Burke's Skin Pocket Book, and even thoughtfully bears the date of his execution on January 28th in 1829. During this time, it was commonplace to have the written confessions of those convicted bound up in a book covered in the guilty party's skin. So we have skin procured as a commodity, then as a form of castigation, and also as a form of collecting. In the past few hundred years, as civilization advanced and stabilized, people became collectors, and it was all the rage to have folks round to view their compelling collections. The rarer the items in the collection, the more talk there would be of how eccentric and exotic or perhaps well-traveled or worldly the collector was, securing their fame and popularity among sophisticated society. Some collectors went further than just offering a peek at a plain old person-covered pocketbook. They sought out and bought books covered in the skin of highly tattooed persons in hopes of shocking some and impressing others, and easily accomplishing both. As an added benefit to these books being part of curious collections, the cadaver-covered books were also thought to be charmed or lucky in some way, as if being in possession of and holding the flesh-fitted object could pass to its owner some influence over fate or good fortune. It was thought that being in contact with the physical remains of a being now dwelling in the spiritual realms could impart secret knowledge or power to the being now in possession of it, which sounds logical, I suppose. But to actually cover a book with human skin, exactly how is this process done? Well, we'll show you. I'm joking, of course. We would never do anything like that. Not in a formal reading room. Silly. The process of preserving skin by tanning it is the same for all kinds of skin. It generally involves treating the surface of the skin with alum, salts, and Roman vitriol to lightly dry and tighten the skin. The mix of these strong chemicals arrests the body's natural habit of decay and essentially turns the flesh into more of a material and less of a tissue of a once living thing. Human skin, once it's undergone this process, becomes like any other type of leather you might own or see. It can be dyed any color, cut, shaped, sculpted, sewn, and embossed, and is practically impossible to tell from that of many other animals. This is why when a collector or even a museum or college professes to be in possession of such an iconic item, genetic testing is required to establish the item's veracity. And since this is a relatively new and trusted method, many books that for centuries seem to have provenance have been found to be fakes. How disappointing. Since 2014, of over 30 books tested that were rumored to be people-pelted, only 16 proved to be verifiably human. That's a comfort, right? Sure. Let's proceed with a couple of tales of some notorious book jacket Joes. The first of which might more befittingly be called Jane Doe, though, as it is the ironic and touching story of a book that is part of the Wellcome Collection in London. The vast collection is said to house, and I quote, a mixture of medical artifacts and original artworks exploring the ideas about the connections between medicine, life, and art. The strange and beautiful 16th century book is an anatomy book about intimate female anatomy, virginity, and reproductive organs and processes. It was written about women by men back then, and then rebound in the flesh of an unknown woman by Dr. Ludwig Bowland in the 19th century. And while it is a fact that we know absolutely nothing about this woman, it is said that the doctor who bound the book in her skin was very covetous of it. He was said to be protective of it and spoke of it as a precious thing, and with great regard for the binding and its informational content. I hope this is true. I hope his attitude was forthright and honorable towards the woman. We have enough ghouls in the world. The book, which is stunningly beautiful, has a warm auburn color and is bedecked in gleaming gold leaf accents. I think it may be possible to credit the soul whom it is made from by stating that it is lovely. Lastly, on a weirdly upbeat note, I'll tell you about 2 more Flesh Donor Fellows. The first is a memoir of James Allen, who was a ruthless highwayman with a long and dastardly career of, well, highway robbery. He would ambush horse-drawn carriages and demand the money and valuables of the passengers, often without mercy. Writing while imprisoned, he documented his many capers and colorful life, one can only assume with a self-righteous slant that bragged or justified his behavior. In his last will, he requested that 2 copies of the book should be printed, and that both should be bound in his own skin. 1 copy, he directed, should be given to his doctor. And who do you think he wished to be bequeathed the second self-leathered ledger? That copy went to the only man he failed to rob, the only man who ever stood up to him and fought off his attempts to rob him. John Fenno Jr. was given the book as penance by James Allen. The book can be viewed at the Boston Athenaeum. And finally, we have a rather simplified record of a miniature book being voluntarily bound in the donated skin of a living donor. The Harvard Crimson paper in 1933 describes how a man happily lived on after having 20 square inches from his back excised in order to provide the leather for the aptly titled book, Little Poems for Little Folk. Sadly, the location of the diminutive book is unknown. Of course, we'd tell you if we had it. It may sound morbid to some, but in researching and reading to you about this unusual practice from past times, we in the Midnight Library have discussed over dinner what books our own hides might be worthy of covering. I don't mind sharing that I believe my own olive-tinted cloth would look amazing as the binding for the Clavicule of Solomon. And Mr. Darling fancies himself one with Jack London's White Fang. Our dinner companions charmingly expressed their opinions, too. Our own rabid researcher, Miss Feifel, is certain her covering would complement the Necronomicon. And our Midnight Library benefactor, Father Philbrook, was slightly evasive when voicing that his directive was already in place for his dermis to decorate the Munich Manual of Demonology. So I guess we could honestly say he's booked in advance. What about you, dear guests? What author inspires you to give them the skin off your back? Your desires are safe with us. We might even be able to help you with them, so... Well, my lovelies, this brings tonight's reading to a close. We thank you for visiting us here in our unique old library and hope that you will tell others in the village how you enjoyed and survived your time with us just fine. Mr. Darling will see that you find your way to the information desk where we have pictures of the glorious books we've told you about. Do be careful on your way back to the village. Good night.
How timely the subject of tonight's reading was, madam. The maids are complaining that there are too many remnants of unusual skins laying about. What should we do with them?
Only skins, no bones?
There are never any leftover bones, madam. The skins that are left are covered in tacky tattoos, which I find to be in very poor taste. And I mean that both figuratively and literally. I don't want them. My tanner can't use them. The Cordwain says there isn't enough there to make a decent belt or matching shoes.
Well, we have a whole body of leather-bound books, and you don't dare Frankenstein a patchwork cover. Ugh. Perhaps we should donate them.
Madam, when you say donate, you don't mean to goodwill, do you? You mean fling them out a second-story window and watch the ghouls fight over them.
You know me too well, Mr. Darling.
The Midnight Library is co-produced by Tess Feifel and Astonishing Legends Productions and is edited by Sarah Voorhees-Wendell with music and sound design by Ryan McCullough. Special thanks to Miranda Merrick and Mr. Darling. No part of the show may be reproduced in any manner without express written consent. Copyright Astonishing Legends, all rights reserved.